Hey, everybody. Today is March 872nd. And today we are designing a great show for you today. That's right, Anthony. We're going to be talking all about design and what we could expect from design in the future. Anthony Melchiori, my friend. How are you, sir?
Glenn, how are you, my brother?
I'm doing really well today. You know, I feel like there's a real evolution that's been happening over the last few weeks, Anthony. I'm feeling that we're starting to feel pretty decent about we know what the rules of engagement are going to be in the future. We're kind of trying to find a way forward. And I got to tell you, I'm feeling palpable positivity starting to germinate out there.
I'll tell you, I was just on a webinar with the Florida Restaurant Lounging Association in Cintas, and I'll tell you something. It's amazing what the managers are doing. It's amazing the level of detail. They're ready to open. I mean, they're ready to go, and what they're doing with their employees, and it's just amazing. But you know, we've been dealing with what was in front of us, and really, what we have to be dealing, we have to look at is long term. And there's nothing that says long term hospitality and hygiene like design. I know that sounds weird, but the way you design your hotel for the future is really all going to be about separation of space and how we come together in the new normal. And again, a term I hate, but it's true. So I'm really excited to talk about design because that's one element I really haven't focused on in the last 6 weeks of really know what's going on in design. So I'm really excited about our guest today.
Well, speaking about the last 6 and 8 weeks, we've been following the story of Mr. Chris Green over at Chesapeake. So let's get started and see what he's thinking about right now. Mr. Chris Green, welcome, sir. So are we crazy, or are you starting to feel a little bit more positive energy with the direction that we all seem to be headed?
Well, there's for sure energy, right? We're starting to see a few states open up marginally, and we're seeing, we have some intel on the Florida beaches that's been, positive, people behaving appropriately, much to the chagrin of the videos that are being posted. I mean, people are behaving. I live in Florida. I've seen people behaving appropriately at restaurants, social distancing, but there is a desire to get out. And I can tell you, we had a corporate call this morning with our entire team, and I'm energized by the TSA throughput. I mean, TSA throughput's up about 70,000 people a day for the past 4 days.
That's great.
We're seeing people start to move around. And we watch our global occupancy, and we ticked up to just under 16.8 as a company, which is up from 14.3. So listen, we're turning the right way. So there is some optimism.
So have you been going to restaurants in Florida?
I still have only done takeout. I'm being extremely cautious because I believe I'm going to have to get on the road at some point here soon, and I want to make sure that I'm keeping myself safe. I'm staying very cautious to this point, Anthony.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm hearing around the country as things open. People are still saying just because it's open doesn't mean I'm going anywhere. And you're gonna take a slow approach. So I'm really excited to talk about design today because I think that's kind of really the next level. We can talk about social distancing, but how are we going to do it where it doesn't seem like we're social distancing? I was just on the phone with someone, and they said coming out of their they have a resort, and coming out of their hotel to the backyard, so to speak, where the pool is and the beach is, it's one space about 100 feet, right? So what they're doing is they're putting in beautiful shrubbery to make it almost look like a maze, but you don't know. You're thinking it's just beautiful shrubbery, and it immediately puts you into a queue, and you don't even realize it. And I think that was just brilliant. I thought that was like, because I don't want to know that I'm social distancing, just do it through design.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating how quickly new behaviors have become kind of reality. I mean, we're so used to now the spots on the floors. Whenever we go anywhere, there's spots keeping us 6 feet away, but we're just kind of adapting to it. My hope is that this is only a temporary normal. We've said the new normal, but I think I'm hoping it's temporary normal. And once we ultimately get past this, but for now, and that's going to be interesting when you talk to the design people, Anthony, is they're going to have to think about short term. And then what does that mean long term though? Is this a permanent change, or is this something that's going to be overcome in the next 12 to 18 months?
Right. And I think, are we going to talk to them right now, Glenn?
Yeah. Why don't we do that? As you can tell, I'm stalling because I got to bring up this graphic. All right, we got a full jam-packed show today. Let's introduce everyone. Starting off, we got Mr. Paul Taylor, founder of Stonehill Taylor, one of the world's leading design firms. Mr. San Suleiman over at Equinox, a burgeoning hotel brand, and Andy Pennington, who runs sales here in our part of the world for Porcelanosa. They make great products such as that LVT stuff that we've been seeing out there. Of course, if you just turned in, we got Mr. Chris Green here, CEO of Chesapeake Hospitality. Anthony, you know what? I'm feeling like you should take the first question right now.
You know, I'm laughing because it's great to see everyone, but I'm laughing because Andy is such a great person. He's such a great company guy. He's standing right in front of Porcelanosa. Where are you, my friend? What city are you in, and where are you?
Well, as you can see, Anthony, I'm actually in Madison Square, and
yes. I'm sure you're going to have lunch over in Italy, and it'll be a pretty normal day for you.
I gave a knock on Paul's door, but he wasn't there.
You're telling me you're not standing in the middle of Manhattan? It's 90 degrees, man. It's beautiful. It's a perfect shot.
Yeah.
No,
it's
but
a green screen, Anthony, I'm afraid.
That's a great. Of course it is. It's a great backdrop, and but I expect nothing less from you, my friend. You know, we were talking, and this is really for everyone. We're talking about what we have to do right now. The social distancing, the stickers, but that's not going to last. Long term, we have got to social distance or whatever we have to do to feel safe, but we have to do it by design. We have to do it where it seems normal. You know, when you walk through an airport or you walk through an amusement park, you know, whoever cultivated that area, we had a thought in mind. If you think of Disney World, when you come out of a ride, you know, 20 years ago, they figured out to bring you right through their shop, right? You don't even realize it. You're buying material $200 later, you're like, what just happened? You didn't even realize it, right? So, Paul, what are you seeing? Who are you working with, and what are you seeing? What are the brands, and what are people looking for right now? I mean, are those questions coming up fast and furious?
Okay, well, of course, the questions are coming up fast and furious, and everybody is trying to have the correct answers. I think that one thing we have to, I've had my firm since 1986, and, you know, I remember after 9/11, we were, for our hotel clients, we're doing studies to convert them into office buildings. I say very seriously, and I was, you know, that's what I was working on. So I think the first mistake here is to think. I mean, I listen to the news 3 or 4 hours a day myself, but you know, it's been 100 years since we had the last pandemic. And so I think this is a rare black swan event. However, going back to what Chris Green was speaking about, there's the now and then there's the future. Many of our projects aren't going to come online for 3, maybe 4 years. So to say that we're going to, do a design that is totally focused on this COVID-19 would be totally wrong. So I think what we're trying to do is not lose the hospitality industry evolved into a much better thing. Mm-hmm. It's like its price points, the bar was raised. You know, design is now there for the select service all the way up to the 5 stars. The expectation was raised. I don't think that now we're gonna backset the thing and with dots on the floor as the permanent solution. Also, in the hotel industry, you're kind of focused on what the public spaces are and the social distancing, but the biggest question are the guest rooms themselves. The guest rooms, if you have a hotel with 2,000 guest rooms, or you're in Vegas or whatever, or 500 or 150, mm-hmm. You come in as a guest. How do I not feel that I've been transferred to me, the person that was before me? So what everybody is speaking about is from the moment that you enter the hotel, you should have to touch nothing. All the doors should open up automatically. Elevators should be voice command or work on your proximity card or your phone, RFID. They're installing UV scanners to go over any sort of document that they hand you, or an access card would be what we really have to be doing is also considering that mechanical systems, which are a very, very expensive part of a building, can be modified. Like if I'm working on a project, which I have many of them, that's going to open up, 2 years from now, and we haven't approved the shop drawings, let's say for the ductwork or for the mechanical systems. The modifications could be made now. Like Chris at Chesapeake might have to make decisions like that. Do I want to spend extra money? Usually developers don't want to spend any extra money.
Really, that's so unusual. The ones I hear have bottomless pockets, right, Sam?
Yeah.
Sam knows that that's the truth.
Yeah. So you want to future-proof your design, right? So I'm going to say that we're going to be adding in, certain features, HEPA filtration, things of that nature. Now, in terms of the public spaces, I think we're going to have to design them basically to be the way we would like it to be before this event, and then figure out how we can reverse engineer it back to being something that can be there for the in-between time. Because I don't think, I'm not personally sold, and I think it would be very foolish to be sold that, 2 years from now, that we're going to have blue dots on the floor, for waiting online. After 9/11, I have to say, I live in Manhattan, and I'm fortunate enough to have a backyard. I would be in my backyard and I'd hear an airplane go over, and like my heart sank. Like I thought they stopped airplane traffic over New York. I literally felt sick when I heard an airplane. And so I think there's a little bit of that shock going on for all of us now.
So we learned that we're going to have a party in Paul's backyard in Manhattan as soon as the quarantine is lifted in New York next week, which is great. I did want to just throw out a show note. LinkedIn is acting a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs this morning, everybody. So for some reason, if I don't see your comment, don't take it personally. I'm not getting an accurate understanding of who's actually watching the show and not. That being said, Sam, how are you seeing things right now from your point of view? You're at the beginning of a great journey with an exciting brand. So, what have you been thinking about? Oh, we cannot hear you for some reason.
You're muted. You're muted.
You must have muted yourself, Sam. Please, Sam, you're muted. We can't hear you.
We can't hear you. So,
Nope.
Andy, let me throw it to you, Andy, as Sam figures out his technical issue. What are you hearing from clients and your customers?
Well, to Paul's point, Paul he said something that you said yesterday, Anthony, which was about creating the space in the hotel guest room, the illusion that nobody's ever been in there before. That was your point yesterday. You were talking to David Kong. I think that what the hotel industry needs to be careful of is not focusing on the fact that they've been doing an incredibly good job already of guest room design. Hospitality design has come on leaps and bounds, and I think the hotel industry has done brilliantly. What we're seeing now is an increased focus on the journey we were already on, and the healthcare design industry has always been looking over the fence at the hospitality design industry, but it's two-way traffic. Now the hospitality industry is looking over the fence at the healthcare industry, and what are the two business sectors learning from each other? There are many, many similarities. We're fortunate because we have a foot in both camps. We supply hospitals and clinics and the wellness industry. We're also very, very heavily rooted into hospitality design. So that's where the conversation was going before this pandemic, and now it's been amplified to 11.
What do you see now the hospitality industry is looking towards the healthcare? What are you providing to the healthcare industry that maybe now the hospitality industry is looking at? I was talking to a doctor yesterday and trying to get some ideas of how we can kind of merge the two. So what are kind of things that you're now looking at to put into hospitality that is in healthcare?
But it's not specifically what Porcelanosa are doing, Anthony, because I don't want to be on this show talking about Porcelanosa.
No, just in general. What are you hearing?
What I'll say is I'll share the learnings and the information gladly, and we call it the science of small things. So it's small things that make big differences. And for a long time, for instance, Ian Schrager opened on the Lower East Side probably 2 years ago with his new model public hotel, and everybody was looking at what he was doing. And he went into Fast Company magazine, and Fast Company magazine, you've got Ian Schrager talking about the need for harder working rooms. And I think there was a metric that he put in there about the smaller footprint of the room, the fact there was hard surface on the floors in the rooms. He could then operationally turn that room 26 times with housekeeping, whereas a housekeeper would normally do 14 rooms in a shift. They can now do 26 rooms. So it's an example of a harder working room, and the need for cleanliness, that need for the fresh room, the need for good indoor air quality. Then the ick factor has had to go from hospitality, and that's why I say we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We were already doing a fantastic job. I travel normally one night, one in every 2 nights I'm in a hotel room, so I'm a consumer of hotels.
Yeah, and you're the only person in Midtown Manhattan right now. That's incredible.
Anthony, before you continue, I did want to say that we've done a couple of shows on healthcare and hospitality, so be sure you check our catalog of programs out there so you could check that out too. You can find that at novacancynews.com. Anthony, take it away.
So, Paul, right now, if I do have a hotel that maybe was about to open, and we couldn't make those adjustments that you may make, whether it be HVAC systems or any technology, it is what it is. We're about to open the doors. Is there anything that you're doing or anything you're hearing that people can do to maybe change a little bit in order to kind of go into our new normal before they open the doors?
Right. So clearly, the easiest thing to do is in terms of just rearranging the FF&E so that you're, follow the guidelines. I mean, I see them on television with their tape measures out. I think going to your point where they put in landscape, landscaping and etc., so that it doesn't look like it's all about social distancing. It looks like it's a really generous design. I mean, that's absolutely right on. I think that from a front desk perspective, with the interface with the client, there's small things that they would need to do right away so that they're not handing them a pen to sign the thing, or sign on this pad with your finger. It's anything to do with touching, and those operational issues are going to that would have to be dealt with. That wouldn't be dealt with by us, but
Sure.
It would be a critical thing, because everything the client interfaces with another person, sneeze guards would be something they're talking about putting at the reception desks. So it's going to look a little bit more like a bank.
Right.
They could, hopefully it would be just a temporary retrofit type item that could be removed,
Right.
when all is forgotten. I think the biggest issue, which I didn't get to before, was cleaning the rooms. So Marriott is instituting electrostatic disinfectant into the rooms, which is something that's used in airplanes regularly, and in healthcare settings as well. So according, I don't know the science of what's in that disinfectant. So to me, it sounds great. I'll stay at a Marriott. I mentioned that to one of my colleagues in the office, and she said, well, no, I'm not going to stay at Marriott, because what's in that disinfectant? You know what I'm saying? So I think that everybody is, is starting from scratch. So I think that this fogging of the rooms, to me, sounds great, because it kind of gets into every crevice. So when I go over to the light switch, I don't have to have somebody with a Q-tip cleaning the light switch. Another thing is UV lights. They have these big UV light stands that they can put into a space, and it basically zaps everything just using light, which has no chemicals.
And do you think going forward you're going to have to design doorways when people are just basically automatically checked, their temperatures automatically checked, or is that something you won't see in America? Maybe you'll see in other parts of the world, but you won't see in America, because that's what's happening in the Dubai airport and other places.
Yeah, I think that very likely temporarily when you go into a restaurant, some restaurants might institute that. We may institute that in my office, in fact. Um, so the idea of that we're going to build that into the building to me sounds a little frightening. So I think I'd like to take a little bit of a deep breath before we go that far.
Right. That makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. You're being smart and not rushing into anything, because why spend the extra money, put all that extra effort in if this is going to be a temporary type of a measure out there? I do want to mention that if you guys want to learn more about that electrostatic gun, we did do a show focused on that last Friday. So go ahead and check that out. Now it looks like technical issues have been solved for Mr. Sam Suleiman. Sam, can we hear you?
Can you guys hear me? How's that?
Woo! That's awesome. Sam, thank you so much for being here.
I was inspired by Anthony with the headphones, and I guess they didn't work. So there you go.
Sorry, they don't.
You should have asked me. It took me 6 weeks to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just sent him a text message to tell him
I
he's got a
can't pull
problem
off
with
the jacket and the headphones. Look,
Sam, he still hasn't figured it out, but that's for another day.
I'm just trying to keep up with Glenn as the co-host of the show. I'm just trying to keep up with him. But Sam, wow, good timing to bring on a new product. So how's it going?
And Andy knows this. Sometimes confused. Actually, we are the not connected to the fitness brand, separate a hotel ownership group, developer, family office. But it's challenging times. I try to remind everybody that I talk to that all of the economy, all of the future, all of our industry is not determined by the normal patterns of a recession, but by the science. And the science is driving everything right now. And the focus has got to be on the science, because where we are going to go see and where we're going to find ourselves in a year and 3 years and 5 years is the science. You guys had a great show. I was watching, you guys have had some great shows lately. And last week you had a great show with a lot of the analysts giving a lot of data, and Airbnb data last week. And I respectfully disagreed with a couple of the guys saying that they think versus a 9/11 and a Great Recession, this is only a 3-year blip versus a 6 or 7 or 8 year pattern. Because if you follow even what Arne Sorensen has said in some of his amazing talks, some of the other great leaders with the industry and where the science is taking us, to me, I think this is a lot, is as significant, if not as more significant than 9/11 and the Great Recession. And so combined, absolutely. And so that thinking that we're going to be in a quick V-shaped recovery, both in the design patterns and how it trends us and where the business goes, I think is most probably mistaken. I'll just give you one example on that. I really think how we go, when I go back to the science point, is really based on how long this takes. So if we get very lucky and the science works out with us, and one of the treatment protocols work in the late summer, early fall, like a Regeneron, one of the injectable antibody treatments that literally is almost curative and works amazingly in September, October, even November, the time difference hugely matters. If we go into late into the fall, into the winter, and the longer people are separated, and the challenges of hotel owners and operators with their businesses, the longer that employees are separated from their companies, the longer and harder the ability of the government to support stimulus and support to the businesses, you have two dramatic different outcomes. So if the science works with us, we could really be looking for 1, 2, 3 if it works the next 3 months. But if we look to the vaccine and we look to the fall to next year, we're talking about a different recovery that will really be different and change all of us. The industry will certainly be here and certainly be strong in the long term, but it's going to be a very different industry.
What are you doing? And that's all makes sense. What are you doing currently in your hotels to what Andy and Paul and we're talking about in reference to the social distancing through design?
Yeah, absolutely. We're working closely, with the brands that we work with. It's very important. I think a lot of people realize that, 6 months ago or a year ago, a lot of our customers and a lot of us, when we would stay at our hotels, we would stay at the number one hotel, number one Airbnb that we were excited about. Now we're going to stay at our second or third favorite hotel or lodging experience that we feel safe in. You guys have talked about that a lot. And so number one is not absolutely what experience we're looking for, but where you get the safety. So obviously the brands have been working really hard about that and giving branded confidence, particularly Marriott, IHG, Hyatt, and Hilton, on really branding how experiences. When you come in the room, do you really feel like that room has been clean? Not just that you've seen it on the website or you read a review that room has been clean, but that it really truly has been cleaned and cleaned by a process that's backed up by science. So we're looking at, whenever we can, particularly with occupancy levels, keeping rooms out of service as long as we can between guests, obviously, following strict protocols, using EPA approved chemicals. That's very important. Keeping surfaces wet the required amount of times. A lot of times people use the right chemical, but they're not following the requirements by the EPA that a certain surface has to be kept wet to absolutely kill the virus. Obviously, at the front desk, keeping people with markings on the floor, giving people in the public area confidence that the hotel is safe and secure.
Hey, Anthony, can I just weigh in?
And then I want to hear from Chris after you, Andy.
Yeah, I didn't know if any of you knew this, but before Sam was a hotelier, he was going to be a doctor, and his major was in infectious disease. And he actually called me the end of January and told me that this was going to be bad.
Well, you know what? From what he was saying, I would have never known that. I'm just kidding. It's like because I was like he's speaking exactly like that, and he's obviously very knowledgeable.
Yeah, but the coming to what Anthony and Paul just said, this is something that all hospitality designers should take great note of, because it's not getting the publicity that it needs. Everybody's talking about disinfectant and fogging machines and UV machine and all of this stuff. There's a price to pay. For every strength, there's an opposite weakness. Now, I talked about what we can learn from the healthcare industry. The healthcare industry is super serious in regard to something called an HAI. And HAI is the language of the healthcare industry. It means hospital-acquired infections. People go to the hospital with a broken finger, a broken wrist, and they come out worse off because they get a disease while they're in the hospital. It's 1 in 30 visitors to a hospital will get a HAI, and that's the tough nut that the healthcare industry has been trying to crack. How to reduce hospital-acquired infections. There are 700,000 of them in the United States, and around 70,000 turn into fatalities, death. So it's really serious stuff. Now, make a note of this, because we know the ASID, the IIDA. There's an organization in healthcare called AAHID, which is the American Academy of Healthcare Interior Designers. They commissioned the most detailed survey on disinfecting surfaces and furniture in the healthcare environment. And what they found is the better the disinfectant, the worse it is for the furniture. So you're disinfecting the room and you're destroying the furniture, you're destroying the surfaces way before their life expectancy is up. So a piece of furniture, a chair, a table, you want to last 10 years, 15 years, 2 or 3 decor cycles. It's ending up in the dumpster in 18 months because of the incompatibility of the disinfectants. So I can send a link, Glenn, to the show.
Could you do me a favor? Put it in the private chat room, and we will get it up on the scroll
That's an essential
below.
document for hospitality designers to now reference, because you can learn from everything that's been going on for years in the healthcare industry. And I think there's not been too much visibility of that in hospitality.
That's a really good point, and I'm telling you, I'm learning more on this show than I've ever learned in college.
Yeah, you got that right. So, Chris, what are you thinking about all of this? And then beyond that, I'd like to hear what you're thinking about in terms of these barriers that we're putting up and stuff. We spent so much time trying to break down the barriers between the hotelier and the guests, and that's going to kind of change everything for a while. But what do you think about what Sam's saying, what Paul's saying? And then after that, man, I got lots of questions from the audience I want to get to.
Listen, you know, sometimes when I've always been super transparent since I've been on here. Sometimes when I do this show with you guys, yep. I can't believe I'm still in hospitality, the things we're talking about. I mean, I got into this to serve others and to provide a safe stay and a great meal and a place for people to get away and relax. And these things we're having to deal with are just the facts that we're dealing with nowadays. I think what Andy and Paul and Sam are talking about are the facts we're going to have to deal with now. I think that the brands had to come out with something. They have to come out with a plan to reassure the public, because listen, our business is in free fall and we need to do something. By nature, we're operators. We're going to do what we can to fix our business. So we need to tell people, you know, we're safe and that we've got cleanliness procedures in place. But at the same time, you can be sure that the big brands are going to be working with companies like Paul's and Andy's to figure out what kind of surface technology can best withstand the right kind of treatments and disinfectants that we have to use. But for sure, where Sam and I differ, I know Sam really well. We serve on some boards together. We differ is I really feel like we're going to push through this. I'm hoping that that's the case and that we're going to push out of here sooner rather than later. You know, we've been tracking the China trending against our own company's trending, and we're right on trend, heading for 35% occupancy sometime in July. So I'm hoping that's the case, and that's what I'm working towards. To your second question, Glenn, broadly, you know, we are thinking about spacing in our hotels. There was a term in design called alone together that people were working on, right? It's that social environment, but being able to be alone and work on your laptop. I think that's going to be more relevant than ever right now. People are still going to want to be in public spaces, but just naturally through design, 6 and 10 and 12 feet away.
Well, I think with Sam, I'm sorry, Glenn.
No, go ahead. I just wanted to get into some of the questions from the audience, but I'd love to hear what your follow-up is.
I think, you know, what Sam is saying, what you're saying is, you know, basically when a guest is feeling safe to travel, we have to keep them safe. What Sam's saying is the science has to basically be the way we look at this. So we have to look at it from a scientific standpoint, and because as Dr. Fauci says, the virus makes the decisions, right? So I think if the government decides we can travel, and I decide I'm going to travel, you as a hotelier have to keep me safe. You know, regardless of what the science says, if we're going to move, then we have to keep ourselves safe as we're trying to get to a vaccine. So I think we're saying the same thing, but two different ways, right? There's one thing is the science, is the responsibility of trying to get us to a vaccine, and it's us if somebody does choose to travel to keep them safe. Glenn, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I want to move on to different stuff because I feel like we talk about this particular topic all the time. We've got these great people here. Paul, one of the folks has asked a question. They've got 15 hotels. They all have spas to them. They're very concerned about that aspect of the business in particular. Is there anything that you're thinking about in terms of design that's going to make people feel more easy, or is it going to be more challenging than we can even perceive right now?
You're saying specifically regarding spas?
Specifically.
Yes. Okay. Well, first of all, I really appreciated all the science input. By the way, I have a small healthcare design group, has a separate library of fabrics.
Cool.
We're at every one of the major
antimicrobial, because we're getting a lot of questions about antimicrobial fabrics too.
Exactly. So the thing is that we have a separate library, and it looks like you're in a hospital. Okay, so one of the problems with working in a healthcare environment to create hospitality in a healthcare environment, having done it for years, is that everybody works against you because of the science. Okay, mm-hmm. So the trick is, how do you overcome that? And you can. And so going back to your question, so when I hear that the disinfectants are going to break down the furniture, it says to me, hey, maybe the slip cover has just returned, you know, where we, you know, which is a great style and a great look, where you have slip covers, which you rotate, and they are somewhat disposable. for a spa has different components to it. A spa is a very good place for porcelana because it has a lot of vitreous surfaces. You have the two issues. One of which is you have the dressing and the lockers or your own private dressing room, depending on the type of place it is. And then usually there's this relaxation room, which is again the furniture and the social distancing and the surface you're touching. So when you go to a doctor, what do? They pull down a piece of paper down from a roll. So when you're laying on that, you know that it's clean because it's a piece of paper. Well, in our 5-star resorts, we're not probably going to want to do that. So maybe there is literally, when you're brought into the relaxation room, there is a fresh topper that's put over the lounge that you're sitting in, or something like that. So I think that those, obviously you have touching, going on in terms of massages and treatments, so that would, they managed to do that in a hospital setting. We try to non-medicalize it as possible. In terms of the disinfecting and all, I mean, you basically have most of the surfaces are probably ideal. Going back to Sam's comment about being able to take a disinfectant in the wet state for a certain period of time. So, I mean, the whole idea of going to a spa is that you already have stress in your life.
Right. You want to relax. How are you supposed to relax if you've got to go through all these procedures and protocols?
Right. So I think that the keys would be that it's probably going to cost a little bit more to deliver the service, because you're going to literally have to, anything that they sit on or go on, it's going to have some hospitality grade thing put down that you touch. I know that I'm not very relaxed when I go to the doctor for an exam, so we don't want to have the treatment room in the spa.
I know I'm not relaxed because I have to go to a doctor and I'm always getting a special kind of check, and that is not fun.
But for example, I actually didn't think of the slipcover idea until Sam brought up his comment, and now I think it's brilliant. There's many other solutions like that, and so we all have to start thinking different as designers, and particularly, and I'm an optimist, I can take the slipcover off in my world in 2 or 3 years, and there's some beautiful fabric underneath of it that hasn't been damaged at all.
My grandma had a couch that was like that for about 40 years. And I go there growing up, I got to sit on the plastic slipcover. I was hoping one day I would be good enough to actually sit on the couch. No such luck. Anthony?
So Paul, you don't obviously listen to our show, because last week I think Glenn mentioned the slipcover in one of our things, because that is a way. Like, I remember Ian Schrager doing it back in one of his hotels, and I walked in and I was like, I think it was the Hudson Hotel. And when I first walked into the lobby, and I was like, wow, slipcovers, that's pretty cool. And because he loves white, right? And so you just change it. So I think that is absolutely an incredible way of thinking about that. And listen, one thing Chris said was, I just want to make people happy. I just want to give them a good meal, and I want to give them a good hotel stay. But one of the positive things that is coming out of this is, and there's not many, but there's one that's positive, is we're thinking again. We're thinking. When things are so good for so long, one of the things we were reacting, but we were not thinking. And one of the things I've said over and over again is, you have to take 1 hour a day to think. Just go sit somewhere and think. And now this is forcing us as leaders to really think. Paul, who is one of the great designers of our time, is sitting here, and he literally just came up with something that is going to probably help his hotel. So I think this is an opportunity for us to really put our thinking caps on, for lack of a better term.
Speaking of putting on your thinking caps, I'd like everyone out there to think of questions that have nothing to do with cleaning, but are focused on design. We've talked an awful lot about cleaning and stuff like that on this show. I got to tell you, I know we're going to be clean. We're going to get through that. So let's just focus on some of the other topics
But Paul mentioned slipcovers. That's design.
No, that's different. But I'm talking about specifically the questions. I'm getting stuff, on chemicals and this sort of cleaning agent and that sort of cleaning agent. I want to talk about design today. We've got these amazing executives and the designer here. Yes.
Glenn, I'll throw in that one of the big things that a lot of us have focused on in the, working as owners, developers, design community.
Yes, ma'am.
We put a lot of energy on our model room in our room, right? But a lot of times you hear in the last 5 years, the trends are the millennials want to be in your public spaces. Everybody cares about the public spaces. They care about the services of the hotel when you're talking about luxury or upscale. Now suddenly everybody's talking, well, everybody is just in a commoditized room now because the services are not there. And you're now just talking about that. I think actually one of the positives of this is we can talk about the TLC and all the great design that's gone into our room product, because there's truly differentiation between a 5-star room, a 4-star room, and a 3-star room. But most hotels don't talk about that because they talk about the great public area, and the great restaurant amenities and the great spa amenities, and all those things are important. But in this environment, particularly pre-vaccine, a lot of those services don't exist. And most people go beeline to the room and they stay in the room and then they get out of the hotel and they clean that room, and that's their cocoon and that's their environment. So I think this could be a real opportunity for us to think about how amazing our rooms are, all the amazing things that have gone into the rooms, and hotels that have great room products, bigger suite products, differentiator in the room. They can really point that out, and it can be a real seller for them.
What did you say, Paul? I think Paul was about to say something.
Yeah, I think that the trend is very appropriate question. The trend towards the accent on the social spaces and the reducing of the size of the guest room is really a response to the real estate environment in the in the gateway cities, the great cities of the world. Take New York, for example, where I've spent a lot of my career working. The room sizes had to get smaller to make projects viable. And so therefore, if you're making the guest rooms smaller, doesn't mean that they don't have to be well designed, because a lot of effort goes into the design of these guest rooms. But it is smaller. And so people are willing to say, how much time do I really spend in my guest room? Okay. Whereas I have got, different F&B venues, like the Moxie Times Square that we did like 5 Moxies. I mean, there's like so many F&B venues. It's almost like the room, as you said, is secondary.
Yes.
So the thing is that if you say, well, the social spaces are not really the driving factor anymore, let's go back to the room, you're still dealing with a very small room.
That's right.
And so there is, if budgets for rooms get bigger, higher, more to spend, think of it as a luxury cruise cabin, with more custom features and things that flip out and all those things. They cost money, and so that's really for a developer to say where he was spending on an FF&E package for a select service hotel, maybe he was spending $10,000 or $12,000 in FF&E. Like, how about 25,000? Something.
Right.
Paul, I didn't know that you designed the Moxie here in Times Square, and Glenn and I have done our podcast from there. And I have a friend, Christian, who runs the Moxie.
I was on our show a couple weeks ago.
I was the architect for it, not the interior designer.
Okay. And one of the things,
both disciplines.
But what I love about the architect of it, or the architecture of it, the spaces. I love, somebody just said be alone together. That lobby is a perfect example of that. You're alone together because there's so many nooks and crannies, depending on who I'm talking to and depending on what mood I'm in. I can go and hide. And we had a meeting. I don't know if Glenn was in the meeting, but I had a meeting with 2 or 3 people, and I felt like I had my own meeting room, and I was like literally 10 feet away from somebody. Right. So you're exactly right. I mean, I think that is. I don't think the lobby is going away anytime soon. I hope to God not. It's not. To me, it's the hotel. It is the hotel. It is the spirit of the hotel. We just got to do it smartly.
Yeah, and the thing was
nothing about cleaning, Glenn. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Paul.
No, I love that you're not talking about cleaning. And Paul, I want to give you a little kudos here because what I was going to say just before you do is the hotel industry has been fooling themselves into believing that guests really want smaller rooms. And you are right. It all was a real estate play. And they figured because people want to go downstairs, they could get away with having small rooms. And additionally, I always thought designing rooms specifically for millennials that were much smaller didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense either because they're going to get older. They're going to start to have kids and they're going to need bigger rooms too. So I really feel like it was one of those feedback loops that we got in the business where everybody started to agree with each other because it felt good, not because it was necessarily based in logic. So thank you, Paul, for bringing that up.
One of the things, I just did a class for, I don't remember if it was NYU or it was one college last week, and somebody asked me a question. I said, do you know where the hotel experience starts? And they said, where? And I said, the real estate play. Because if you do the real estate right, you know, and that owner owns that building right, it feels better. When you go into the Moxie, it feels good. It's a small hotel, but the owner did it right because however he was able to finance or whatever, he was able to put the touch points in to make it feel something special. So I can't agree more.
Anthony, you were talking touch points, but I'm getting a lot of questions right now about touchless points. In addition to that, Aaron Michelle is asking things like, what about light switches in the room? What about dividers on those big communal tables that we've been talking about for all of these years? How are you going to start to think about more of that touchless room experience? Chris, maybe you want to try to field that if possible?
I mean, this stuff's all doable, right? The proximity-based sensors for lights and light switches and hand washing, that stuff's all available. When you start thinking about the lobby, I think that whatever we need to do, this is my recommendation. What we'll be doing in our portfolio is whatever we're gonna do for lobby separation spaces is going to be able to be put back, because I really do feel like we're going to be traversing a temporary normal. So, you know, that's going to be something that we're going to work on as a temporary solution. But permanently, there's no reason we shouldn't be able to go to touchless doors where you wave you can do it now with your phone, contactless check-in, open your door, guest room door. I'm not sure how to open the mechanism yet. That's something we'd have to work with. But those can all be done.
I'm sure a tech provider will do that.
Yeah, they can figure it out.
And Eric Norris, a viewer, Eric Norris, is saying he just went to a property that had touchless lights, touchless thermostat, everything touchless, do not disturb, everything. He said it's the way of the present, not the future.
Well, you're going to be able to interact with voice command, right? You can do. Yep. I do it at home. I tell Alexa or Siri to do certain things, and it happens. We're going to be able to do that in our guest rooms. We can already throw our Netflix on the TV. The next thing we'll be able to use our Alexa commands to speak to them.
I feel like Alexa is just like my wife. I ask her to do something, doesn't happen.
Yeah, but we'll be moving there. This is one more thing, Anthony. Anthony said something really brilliant. Was that I know, get your chest out.
I know, yeah. I haven't heard this before. Something brilliant that Anthony said?
It's forcing us, and I agree, it's forcing us to be reflective and think about the things that matter. We were in such a high point on the business that we were really drinking from a water hose. Occupancies were high, business was rocking. We've had this space, whether we like it or not, to think about how we can be better coming out, and how the things we can improve about the guest experience, whether it's touchless or not, are ways that we can improve coming out. And so, like you said, don't waste a crisis, right? Somebody smart said that one time. We need to use this to get better.
Yeah. So, Paul, what do you think about the whole touchless room, touchless hotel?
Okay. What I find is the lower the price point of the hotel developer brand product, those type of technology things are more acceptable. Then as you go up into the 5-star, people want simple things because their guests tend to be older, wealthier. They don't want to fit. Like you said, you talk to Alexa. I have a Mercedes, and Mercedes, once that voice comes on to talk to me, I can't shut her up. I mean, it's like really irritating. It's like she even talks back to me. She says,
another wife joke in there somewhere.
Yeah. So anyway, personally, I don't think that from a residential quality experience is something we necessarily want to be doing. It may in fact be necessary. And so the question is, if it's not too expensive and we can implement it, we should. But I don't think it's something that it improves the quality of our life. It improves the quality of our life so we don't get killed from the disease. I agree with that. In terms of luxury and all of that, not so much.
No, I think Forbes right now, and I know they're working on new standards of luxury. And back in the day, a year ago, 2 years ago, that's how almost like yesterday, texting wasn't luxury. But now people want you to text so they don't have to, talk to anyone. So I think the standard of luxury coming through what Forbes is developing, I think it'll be very interesting to see what people will accept and what people won't accept.
Yeah. One of the things that I think that we're seeing now, and we're not aware of it, is we've seen a culture in the construction industry that's been focused on green building, and we've seen the green building, the sustainable building, making sure that the building's been built responsibly. Now the movement is shifting to the well building and the wellness of the occupants of the building. And it's not just the wellness of the guests, but it's the wellness of the people that work in a building. There's a direct correlation, according to the International Well Building Institute, who are our next door neighbors there on Fifth Avenue, that when you're designing the building to the well standard for the occupant, you get better productivity from the occupants of that building. And now what we're doing is, not consciously, we've got to focus on the wellness of the guest. The design's got to focus on the well rather than the why.
Andy, a lot of people are talking about designing rooms with either carpeting that promotes socially distancing and stuff like that. I know that you sell an LVT product, and I know that you don't want to focus on selling that today. But do you think that this is really the tipping point, and people are going to really think about utilizing that type of product, whether it's from Porcelanosa or another company in the future, rather than carpeting in the guest rooms?
I'm not the antichrist of carpet in a guest room. That's Anthony. But you can't escape the fact that the hard surface in a guest room is a far better choice. And Marriott have a wonderful podcast called Behind the Design, and one of Marriott's design leads, a gentleman called Lionel Sussman, he mentioned something about the self-serving nature of I think he was talking probably about laminate or vinyl, LVT, whatever acronym we want to use for this product nowadays. It's not porcelain tile. I'd love to see porcelain tile in all the guest rooms, but let's just call it hard surface. And Lionel said, if a guest drops red wine or coffee on a carpet, probably the most they're going to do is dab it up with a towel. Probably that's the most they're going to do, because they can't do anything else. Mm-hmm. They're not likely to call housekeeping, and they're probably just as unlikely to tell the front desk that the carpet got stained when they're checking out. Flip that and say you spill something on a laminate floor or an LVT floor. Intrinsically, you're going to take some paper towel and dab it up. So it's a floor covering that pays back. It's a self-serving argument. So and again, last week, I don't know who it was. It may have been Chris, but on one of your shows last week, you were talking about hotel operations and 1 minute of housekeeping time costing $50,000 a year. Somebody said that metric. So 1 minute of housekeeping time is a cost of $50,000 a year to the hotel. So when you're reducing the time that it's taking to sanitize the floor, not just clean the floor, you can clean a guest room in half the time with a hard surface than you can with carpet. Those are valuable. Those are compelling arguments as to why you would use hard surface versus carpet.
Yeah,
Carpet its place is now in area rugs rather than wall to wall.
LVT was actually becoming a trend before this. I have to say, like at the TWA hotel that we just completed, it's there. It's an upgrade now. We're doing in Houston, Hyatt Regency. And the LVT is for for their upgraded rooms, So I mean, there's no conflict there. Often we do sort of pair it with a little area rug. So I just say.
Right. Yeah. And that's the question I was going to ask you, if you're seeing more LVT put in, Paul. But just to get back to Andy's question about Chris isn't good at math, so I don't think that was Chris that did that. But anyway. But and the reason I'm you call me Antichrist for carpet is simply because it just feels better, LVT, in my opinion. Sam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you've seen a couple brands early on mandate this, even in the mid-scale and upper upscale.
Right.
You look at like Hotel Indigo from IHG.
Look at economy brands that have done that, and it really adds to the wow factor for that room.
Motel 6 even, they've mandated that. And the key issue that many wood boxes have dealt with is sound issues and acoustic issues. But there's been a lot of technology in the sound, dealing with the sound and the acoustics, that really have improved that. So I think it's a no-brainer. Obviously, it is a cost issue and replacement cycle, whereas you would change a carpet every renovation cycle. Generally, the economics would generally have the LVT last 2 or 3 cycles. And it's that age-old question in design. It usually, before it wears out, it looks ugly. So how do you deal with the design and usually work on long-term design trends of a great wood look floor that's going to look modern and contemporary for the long term? But I think it is absolutely, once we come back to full speed and in the interim, people are going to want wood floors, because you look at residential trends and everybody has gone to hard surface floors in their homes.
Right. All right. So I'm getting a lot of questions about, we're getting into summer. People thinking more and more about the outdoor area, and the pool keeps coming up. Social distancing on the pool area, social distancing in the pool itself. How are you gentlemen thinking about that going forward? Chris, I know you've got an idea already over there because you're nodding your head.
Well, I have a friend that runs a big resort in Florida, and I was talking to him this weekend. And they just have reduced their chair count by about 55% on the pool decks, and the lifeguards on staff now are doing in and out counts into the pool and out of the pool and into the hot tubs. And they really are. They're not only are they, I guess, literally they're lifeguarding, right? They're keeping people. If they're not in family pods, then they have to be separate by the minimum distances. And also they've opened up their bars, but they've opened up the 4-sided bars on the pool decks with access lines on each side, no seating, right? So you can only access from one side at a time, and they're doing a good job at it. I mean, we're like I said, we're operators, so we're going to figure out how to play within the rules because we want to get back to doing what we're doing, and it can be done, and it can be done thoughtfully.
I just spoke to somebody in Key West, and he owns a beautiful resort out there, a very big resort, beach, pool, and he has a hygiene manager that he just hired. That his job is to just deal with her job is just to deal with the employees and making sure they're doing everything, coming to work the right way, and the uniforms, making sure that the uniforms are being used by an outside company, not bringing their own uniforms. They're being cleaned by an outside company. Also, one of the things, this is just off topic, but one of the things that he did I thought was fascinating was he's checking the employee's temperature, but then he's putting a sticker on everybody's name tag, a different color every day, to make sure that that person's temperature was checked. And I thought that was fascinating. You said we're hoteliers, we'll figure it out. And I thought that was an interesting thing. And then he's going to have a hygiene manager. He's not going to call a hygiene manager, walking around specifically to ensure that the guests are doing what they need to be doing.
I'll jump in here real quick. I think one interesting thing I was just reading about, and the discussion we've had, is there's been a great move from chlorinated pools to salt treatment systems in pools. And funny enough, actually, the chlorine pools are actually stronger with dealing with viruses and so forth. So there's been a discussion of how do you adapt a lot of the newer pool systems and the saltwater systems back to the chlorine system. The bigger discussion, though, is it's kind of interesting in the pool setting, in the pool deck setting, the safest place probably to be is actually in the pool, because the chlorine generally kills the virus immediately. So the hotelier has got to really pay attention more as the person gets out of the pool, walks to deck, lays in the chair, goes to the restroom, goes to the snack bar, and walks to the room. Those are the areas actually that are probably more important than the actual being in the pool, which is
so
probably
I got an idea. I got an idea. Before the guest checks in, have them take a dip in the pool.
There you go. There you go. We can spray them down, and then they go in the pool.
Yeah,
and then they drink the pool water. It's chloride.
Well, better than drinking the Kool-Aid in our political environment. That's for sure. Okay, so let's see, Paul. So one of the questions that we keep getting is here's one. We don't want to piss off Anthony, but John is going to risk it anyway. How does the developer afford all these extras to continue to make a profit and grow our industry development and investing? So, Paul, you've got to be considerate, of course, all the time you're designing properties to make them as affordable as possible. And I also know that you said you're not going to think about a lot of the things that we're grappling with today on properties going to open 3 to 4 years ago. So how do you start to rectify that there may indeed be increased costs in the construction process, and how are you going to make developers understand that and get along with it?
Right. So this is we are very much involved on most of our projects in the development of it and feasibility of it up front.
Hey, Paul,
So
I'm sorry, but I realize that Chris has to go at 1. My apologies. I just wanted to make sure we wish him well and send him on his way, right? You got to be out, Chris? Yes.
Yep. Thank you.
See you later, buddy. Be good. Sorry. Please continue, Paul.
Yeah. We're involved in the feasibility and acquisition process with developers that we've worked with for years. And so, like you're talking about the Moxie project, originally, it was going to have, we could only fit in 550 rooms, and then that didn't pencil out. So we got put on our thinking caps, and I think we got it up to 615 or whatever. But in order to make the project viable and get financing, all those things and the dollars have to be considered. Now, in the case of, for example, the duties that have been placed on the imports, particularly from China, and the threats of what it was going to be. So that was a little bit of the last storm. So in all of our budgets, we would always have put down, what these would be.
Right.
Maybe
10
they
or
won't happen,
15% contingency,
or even
in case.
Yeah, actually, we're using a larger number than that. And yeah, it kept on changing. But now I definitely agree with you. I think that in terms of, I'm not sure that the FF&E necessarily would cost anymore. I think it's all the whiz-bang gadgets that we were talking about before, and infrastructural changes to the building. So I would say that we just have to create a budget line for that, but it will determine whether a project happens or not.
Right, and I think to our point before is, the hotel experience starts at the day we think about building a building, right? And all the points you're talking about is things get more comfortable if you can put more rooms in, and then you can think about how you cover your debt. And Paul, I just realized, I think I know where we worked together. A Queens property. There was a Queens property hotel that I think you and I worked on. But we'll
okay, excellent.
Yeah,
Perfect.
But anyway, so Sam, what do you think about that question they just asked? You're dealing with that every day.
Yeah, I think it's a struggle. Actually, you guys just cut out for a second. Sorry. I have an audio.
No, I said the question that Glenn just had up. What's your response to that?
Yeah, it was kind of about we were having the discussion earlier. I think some of the things we're talking about are more midterm and long term. Obviously, right now, everybody is holding on to cash and really trying to look at every cost that they can spend right now. And you're kind of in the situation with the property physically that you are. We know, we read and hear reports of, hotel owners not paying key vendors, keep paying their bills to the brands and dealing with the banks right now. So obviously it's hard for them to think about investing on new LBT at this moment right now. So a lot of those things we're talking about is more mid to long term as we go into a long-term environment as we emerge. And like earlier, Chris and I think Paul were discussing some of the outcomes of 9/11 and how those change us forever. So I think some of those we'll see permanent midterm. Those effects are going to be here. Obviously, for the midterm, everybody's got to hold on to every ounce of cash right now and keep the hotel and the business operating. It's a scary time, and trends are coming. So I think a lot of people that are in the business just want to maintain their situation and keep going. There was a report by a multi-industry ownership group analysis that predicted that 32 to 38% of hotel ownership groups won't be in the business in 18 months. That's very significant. And a lot of people haven't been talking about that. It might not be that they physically lost control of the hotel and had to get out, but they decided that some of the trends we've seen to going from less single operators to larger operators and REITs, that trend is moved like many other trends are moving forward right now. So I think the key is for current owners to focus on keeping the cash flow going and keeping the long-term viability of the hotel right now in the short to midterm. But a lot of these trends for the midterm and the long term will absolutely be ones that we can think ahead if you're planning a renovation or thinking of what you're going to do in 1 to 2 to 3 years.
So if we're talking about, wellness and keeping customers safe, one of the coolest things that I've seen out there, and I got to witness it myself when I had the chance to go check out the Porcelanosis factory in Spain a couple of years ago, and witness it in real person at the Radisson Mall of Americas. You got this great product out there called Creon, right? And it kind of, Andy, and it kind of absorbs all of the volatile stuff that's in the air and makes the place actually cleaner.
I'm trying to not sell anything today.
I know. I'm sorry, but it's just such a cool thing. And we're talking about wellness. We got to talk about it, right?
Andy, when I was in Spain and you showed me that product, I know you can't say what I said, my reaction to that product, but it was a reaction that you apparently will remember the rest of your life, and I will certainly remember it. It was just my reaction to that product. And again, it's just, this is a product that we need to learn about. So anyway, I was blown away by it.
Yeah, so Paul, and the answer to the last question was, how are we going to do more with less? Because we can't keep adding cost. Right. So there are clever things that we can do that are not going to cost any more, to Paul's point. The technological whistles and bells, they may add significant cost architecturally, but for the FF&E and for the fit out of the room, I think there are things that we can do now and are doing now that are massively beneficial. And having solid surface in the guest room is a no-brainer. So you could talk about solid surface as a family of product, but the Creon product that you're referencing is our K-Life Creon, and it's a photocatalytic solid surface, and it's natural light, UV light, hitting the solid surface activates what we call free radicals, hydroxys, and they will clean. They will get rid of bacteria. So we've got international standard certification for horrible stuff like Streptococcus aureus, I can't pronounce it, staph, and E. coli. And the trend now is to look at fomite transmission. Fomite transmission, I don't know if you're seeing the phrase, you'll hear it a lot. It's the transmission of surface to person. So surface to person transmission. So droplets of the virus, droplets of the norovirus or staph or E. coli, something that's going to make you ill can be on a surface and you can't see it. And clean surfaces, visually clean surfaces, are probably more dangerous than dirty surfaces because you're drawn to clean a dirty surface. But what you can't see is going to make you ill. That's the fomite transmission. So when you have a surface such as a K-Life surface, it could be a coffee table, it could be the console, the desk, it could be the vanity, it could be the shower tray. When you have a surface that's actively antimicrobial and is also contributing to the air quality in the room and is not costing a penny more than you would pay for your normal solid surface, it's a great example of why you're going to see a lot more Creon. The Creon you explained was the iceberg wall in the Radisson Blue in Bloomington Mall of America. That was an architectural piece of splendor. What we're talking about here is literally shower trays, vessel sinks, vanities.
Are they using this in hospitals, in operating rooms, things like that?
Yes, Anthony. And another thing you can mark me down on here is another thing that you're going to see that's coming from healthcare that's going to just become the norm in hospitality. The Center for Health Design in San Francisco, they're the governing body of what we call evidence-based design. And evidence-based design, there are 8 principles, and the 8th principle is post-occupancy evaluation. And there's a professor there, one of the founding fathers, a gentleman called Roger Ulrich, And you can go to the Center for Health Design, you can download any number of papers on hand washing. So we've all been talking about washing hands, something as basic as washing hands. I felt insulted the first time I heard Boris Johnson talking about wash your hands and sing happy birthday twice. But what the hell is this guy on about? But now, yes, it's been drilled into us, the importance of hand wash. It's coming from healthcare. But what we learned in healthcare with infection control is when the faucet is directly over the drain, when the water hits the drain, the stagnant water, the dirty water in the drain, then evacuates airborne bacteria out of the drain into the area where you're washing your hands. We're now in hospital, we have infection prevention sinks where the drain is offset from the faucet. So now the faucet runs, and it's still a bit like, we were all grossed out. I think the lesson came from Asia, that people didn't want to stand on a shower tray or in a shower with the drain in the center of the floor. They didn't want to stand on the drain. They felt it was gross. So we saw a trend where the drain was moved to the end of the shower, and it became the linear drain, norm for showering. We're still cleaning our teeth over an open drain with bacteria coming back at us. So now we're going to see the offset drain become the norm in a vanity sink in a hospitality environment. That'll be the norm in a hotel room. Won't cost a penny more. It's just better.
Paul, are you dealing with anything like that?
Well, first of all, I have to say that we don't really need to avoid all bacteria in normal life. I mean, in fact, people who avoid all bacteria, like the bubble boy, die. I mean, the American Indians, when the Europeans came over, died. So we have to be getting small doses of everything out there as part of our normal life. The situation we're facing now is that people are dying from this in large numbers. This is very unusual. I think I'll go back to the science thing. For right now, we're all being careful, and we're going to follow all the mandates, and we'll see how it develops. It's nobody knows the answer. I'm absolutely sure of that. And so
I don't know. I see a lot of experts on Facebook all the time. Every single comment.
I think that if we had this exact same show in September, we could say, and back in May we said this.
All right.
And we could see whether those things came true or not that Sam was talking about, or they're not going to come true. So we're all learning about this, as it goes.
I take this as a challenge, Paul. We'll do this in September. And Anthony, I know you want to speak, but I feel like Fomite Transmission sounds like a great band name that should play at the Double Down Saloon in Las Vegas. So when we could travel again, let's go see that band over at the Double Down.
And I disagree with you, Glenn. The experts aren't on Facebook; they're on Instagram. All right,
there too, huh?
Yeah, they give you video too. But all I know is if there's a surface that you're using in an operating room in a hospital to keep me safe when I go for the surgery, I want the same material at the front desk, because those front desks get touched by 100 different people. But again, we can look in September and see where we're at. What other questions we got there, Glenn, my brother?
All right. So I do think we need to be wrapping up soon, but we just got to bring this up again. I know you've covered costs at length, but it needs to be brought up again. Costs are going to increase for hotels, some of which need to be passed on to customers. Top that up with additional costs customers are going to fork out to travel with airlines that leads to less customer traveling in the short term. Again, it will impact hotels. Sam, do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to philosophy. When I watched Anthony's show over the years, is that there's people that are in this industry. They do it either on a one-off hotel or they're in a big company, and they look at the philosophy of the company, how they take leverage, how they position themselves is all heart in, and they look at this as a long-term proposition. If they're renovating a hotel, operating a hotel, if you're in this business, like Chris was saying, and you love hospitality like all of us do with heart and soul, and you look at each asset that you were going to do for the long term, and you're going to look at formites and details on the fabrics and everything, because you know you're going to be involved with that hotel for the long term, then you know that, sometimes black swan events like this can come, and we can have recessions. But if you plan out and you prepare, you're going to weather the storm. And in the long term, you're going to be fine, right? But it's going to be rough times. Unfortunately, like every industry, a lot of people have got into the hotel industry looking more on the short term. And maybe have not looked to looking at maybe flipping a property, not putting the quality, looking at the details, putting that heart in, but looking at repositioning of flipping a hotel. What's my cap rate in 1, 2, 3 years? And those are the people, unfortunately, that are going to have a harder time looking at the costs and making this work. So I think if you've been in this business for the long term, and you've had the heart and you put in the TLC, you love this business, you're going to be fine, and you're going to figure a way out to do the way the cost basis does. But true, absolutely, we're under cost to salt now. It's without doubt. If we can't be able, if we're having struggles to pay key, vendors and the brands or other things, how can it work to invest in the property right now? It's very tough.
Right, and there's short-term thinking and long-term thinking. The short-term thinking is emergency thinking that you got to get over that wall. And once you get over that wall, what does that look like? And I think that I've never seen an industry, if you took care of your guest and you long-term and you really concentrate on your guest, everything else takes care of itself. I don't know of an industry that took care of its guests and thought 6 months ahead of their guests that went out of business. So this is not an expense-driven industry. This is a revenue-generating industry. It's about generating revenue. And the way you generate revenue right now is you make sure that your guests feel comfortable and safe, and then everything else will fall into place. But I think your point is well taken, Sam.
Excellent. Man, our 1 hour shows keep getting longer and longer and longer every single day, Anthony. We're having such great guests. The conversation is so spectacular, and I love that this audience is sticking with us for such an extended period of time. But I do think we need to start moving towards the end of our conversation. Maybe, Andy, some final thoughts you could leave with us today.
Well, I think that we're in a very, very fortunate position because we're surrounded by incredible people, incredible organizations that are leading the way with design regulation and with design technology, design information. And I would give a shout out to here in New York City. We've got the Well Building Institute, we have DELOS, we have the Center for Active Design. And in fact, the Fomite piece of that I shared with you, the Center for Active Design in New York City have just put two incredible documents online. One's leveraging building to mitigate viral transmission, and the other's building trust in the workplace. These are brilliant documents that are available to us all, and we wake up every day to learn. And now is the time. I think on Friday, our healthcare design podcast, which is the one that you don't produce, Glenn. But,
be sure to check out the Hotel Design Podcast wherever you get
the Hotel Design Podcast that you do produce. Wonderful. The Healthcare Design Podcast on Friday has an incredible contribution from Linda Livert, who's the founder of the Healthcare Surfaces Institute, and she's talking about the 7 aspects of surface selection, applying it to the hierarchy of controls. So this information is out there. We're in a wonderful place in time where this, we can learn all of this. And we've just, as a company, just the one thing I'll say for Porcelanosa, we just launched Porcelanosa Academy. And if you go online and just type in Porcelanosa Academy, there are a series of online instantaneous webinars on crayon, on solid surface and porcelain tile and luxury vinyl tile, any number of design-related subjects. So that's the shameless plug out the way.
Excellent.
So, but the one thing I don't believe that you just said, Andy, was that Glenn is not producing a podcast. There's one podcast that Glenn doesn't produce. I don't believe that.
That one slipped.
You know, he changed his son's name to Podcast, right?
Right.
His oldest son's name Podcast.
My other son's name I changed to Andy, so I just hope that that means something to you over there, Sam.
Great show.
Yeah, I want to have you give some final comments now, but people are also wondering how you're thinking about future development for your company as well. Maybe you could wrap that into your final thoughts.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've seen people talk about, still going forward with deals right now, still getting projects out of the ground, still going ahead with renovations. But to be frank and honest, it's a tough environment right now. And right now, everybody's got to, see if those projects are viable for the short term, midterm, and long term. Obviously, Chris and I know each other a long time, been good, close friends. And I'm a very optimistic guy and very positive about the long-term future of this business. This business has been here since the beginning of the planet, and it will continue to be. And hospitality is so important. People want to travel and explore the world. But a guy who was a hero in my old career is on TV a lot. His name is Dr. Michael Osterholm, and he's one of the top, epidemiologists guys. And if you see his message when he goes on TV, we just got to speak truth and be honest with people that, yeah, it's going to be rough in the short and midterm, but the long term is going to work out. And I think if you level with people that, with certain realities that are going on, it gives people actually more comfort than telling them sometimes, because I've seen on some industry talk that there's a lot of happy talk only going on. And I think there's a balance of that going on. So I think for the future, development is going to be hard in the short term, the midterm. Long term, it will still need supply and so forth. For the industry overall, obviously, we just got to watch the markets. Like I said, if it could be a tale of two directions depending on the science. If we get a treatment in the next few months, we really could see a recovery that is truly V-shaped, and really looking back to getting back to 2019 numbers in 2021, excuse me. If it takes longer for the vaccine, if the science takes longer and we go further to start the recovery, we're more looking at U-shaped or L-shaped recovery. It's going to take longer. And obviously, we're in the kind of fourth bucket of recovery of industries in this industry. So there will be a recovery. We will come back, but it could be, I really encourage people to follow closely the airline industry and either, I would never do this in the past, but a lot of the great CEOs now of the hotel companies did quarterly earning reports in the last week. Marriott, Hilton, IHG, Hyatt. I would encourage people to log in those sites and listen to those calls, because between the lines, you really hear some key information about what they really believe, and you can hear in their voice, and it gives you real direction on where we're going to go from here. But long term, we're going to be bright, and this is a great industry with great people. But in the short term to midterm, we'll see how it's going to be.
Right. And before we go to you, Paul, Rodrigo Lilo Jara says it's also an important point that fast testing needs to be implemented as a regular protocol for people that are traveling out there. And we need to maybe do some other things as well as a healthcare electronic card or passport. I don't know about that last part, but I think the first part makes a whole lot of sense. I only say that, Rodrigo, because we start to get into privacy issues. Anthony?
Sports just came back this weekend in the form of UFC. I'm a UFC fan. I'm a big MMA fan. And one of the fighters, they had a 30-page document that was regulated by, I believe, Florida, of all the things that they had to do. And everybody had to be tested. And it was just an incredible amount of things that they had to do. And one of the fighters was tested positive. And so he was not allowed to stay, and he was not allowed to fight. And obviously they quarantined him because of testing. So out of everybody there, only one person was positive. But of that one person, if he would have stayed, could have infected a hell of a lot of people at that facility. So I think that that's a really good, a well taken point. By them doing that and them opening up, they probably did a favor to many, many people, because that gentleman didn't know he was sick. And I think that that's a really, really good point.
Great. Paul, how about you? Some final thoughts, sir?
Yes. We have two sides of our brain. And I think that we can use both.
Then why do so many people not use either?
So we have to be logical and follow the science and the recommendations and do all the suggestions that were made on the show. But in the essence, I really agree with what Sam was saying, that hospitality is about the heart part. It's about the emotional impact. We're in the business of creating environments to make people happy, and so I don't want to go away or feel that that's behind me. I'm back to designing hospital rooms, my suggestion is don't lose the heart part. And, like if a forest burns down, it comes back, healthier afterwards. And, but trees get burnt up, and I may be one of the trees, who knows?
I hope to God not.
Hope not. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. This was truly informative, very interesting, and the positive comments that we're getting is incredibly overwhelming. So I guess the only thing we have to say to you guys is we'll see you in September, Paul and Sam and Andy. Thank you guys for being here. Paul, we know, stick around backstage. Anthony's going to want to wrap up with you. All right. So Anthony, really interesting, really informative. I'm glad that we were focusing on design today. And, tomorrow we're going to be taking a look at technology. So nice compliment there.
Well, what I loved about the panel today is you really had the science, you had the design, and you had the actual product. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that the show's doing is, one of the things that if you go on social media, if you watch one thing, 27 other things that you're interested in like that come up. So I like poker, I like the UFC, that keeps coming up. So I just keep seeing the same stuff. So if I'm looking at whatever it is, it's a negative thing keeps coming up. If I look at just the sunny side of things, just sunny side things come up. What I love about this show, it gives you everything.
Yep.
It populates everything. It's just not what you're looking at. It's giving you information that you would have never heard or seen or looked for before. And I learned so much today. It was incredible.
Uh-oh, producer Jeff.
The thing I learned about today is we are definitely going to have to get Anthony to the Double Down Saloon in Las Vegas.
I think so, because he did not appreciate my Double Down joke because he does not have any reference for the Double Down. Coolest bar off the strip in Las Vegas.
We're going.
If you like it, if you like your bars dirty and grimy, it's freaking awesome.
Okay, I don't know about that later.
No, we'll have to put you in a hazmat suit. It'll be great. It'll be a lot of fun. Hey, everybody, be sure that you subscribe to our newsletter. Text the word hotel to 66866. It's easy enough. Just the word hotel to 66866. You get lots of great content in our Sunday night newsletter. Anthony, before we get into hospitality success, we got to get everybody back onto GoFundMe, #HospitalityStrong for the Relief Fund. We're collecting money to help hotel workers that have been imperiled.
Yes, please. I'm working with Scal International, or actually Scal USA. Please go to USA GoFundMe, USA Hospitality. You got me all confused. USA Hospitality Strong at GoFundMe. It's really important because, like we were saying yesterday, not to go through the numbers again, but a tremendous amount of people are out of work. This money is going directly to the hotel workers, directly to the hospitality workers. And yesterday, we had some great contributions. Some of my friends also donated. So I think we're up to like $1,500.
Nope,
we want to get that number.
$1,650. So
our goal is $100,000. It all goes to hospitality workers that are struggling, that are trying to pay their light bill, trying to put food on the table for their family, trying to buy a container of milk. That's where it's going. It's not going to anywhere else but 100% of the funds. So please go to GoFundMe, USA Hospitality Strong. We had a lot of support yesterday. We're going to be doing things like a poker game. I think poker game's coming in a couple weeks. We're going to announce on my social media things that we're doing. One of the things that I said yesterday, if you donate a certain amount of money, I'll send you one of my ties. I'll sign it and send it to you right away, because one of the things on the show, people are always talking about the ties. So we're going to do things to inspire people to contribute. But remember, we're all in this same ocean, but we're all in different boats. And that's really important to remember. I'm in a safe, healthy environment right now. A lot of people aren't. And that is important to remember. So the money goes right to them.
Right. Beautiful. Absolutely love it. And be sure to be with us here each and every day at 12 Eastern Daylight Time to bring to you exciting shows. Like I said, tomorrow we're going to be focusing on that technology aspect of things. And on Friday, for Feel Good Friday, we are going to be mixing a cocktail, and I'll be putting up shortly the recipe for that drink that we're going to be doing on Friday. So all of you at home can participate with us and, make your comments about how much Anthony and I are messing up simple drink recipes.
And please go to Hospitality Success on Facebook at hospitalitysuccess.com. Please join. Please sign up. We're having a conversation. We're just downloading some information that was sent over to me. That's probably the most fascinating information that I've read about this, what's going on. So we're always putting up information. We're doing a webinar on the 19th of May, talking about how do you open up your property or your restaurant in a healthy and safe way. So please go to Hospitality Success. My partner, Jeremy Pinkerton, is amazing, and she'll be talking also some about revenue strategies in that webinar.
And a much better co-host than me. Thank you all for being here. You didn't have to nod yes so quickly, Anthony. Oh, goodness gracious. We'll see you all back here tomorrow at 12. Remember, you've got one life, so blaze on, and thanks for checking in.